Well, good afternoon, Scott Baker.
Good afternoon, Mikey. I just this second, and I don't want to tell on you, but like literally 32 seconds ago, right before we came on camera.
Okay.
Here's what I heard, folks. There was we had the screens, sort of preparatory screen up, so I couldn't see Mikey. But here's what I heard.
Yes.
I heard now the title of our field note is the upside and downside of getting pumped up during competition.
It's really gonna disappoint you.
I had this sense that maybe you were trying to get yourself revved up for this edition of Lead Better.
Very disappointing. I saw a little spider web up next to my camera, and I picked it off, and I was like, "What am I going to do with this spider web?" I put it in my palm, and I rubbed it out. Sorry.
And you killed Charlotte.
Yeah. Well, Charlotte wasn't involved, but yeah, it had nothing to do with the title of this field note.
All right. So, okay. Now, it is an interesting thing. And you would say competition, getting pumped up, is this really leadership? Well, remember, admired leadership and our field notes are for business leaders, corporate leaders, teachers, athletic coaches, parents. And when it says competition, that doesn't necessarily mean always game time. There's a verdict, there's an outcome. This can be the person that's giving the big presentation. It could be the person that's going into the big sales meeting. It can be the person that's preparing like for their first classroom lesson that they have to deliver. There's all kinds of ways that people are performing, and the notes here are for the person who's dealing with that, but it can also be for helping the person who's coaching the person who's dealing with that.
Right, exactly. Like you might be giving out really bad advice about how much you should pump yourself up, and that might be, especially when it comes to high performance, right? It could be completely the wrong advice that you're giving out.
Mm-hmm.
So,
So first of all, and I have a bunch of thoughts about this field note. I like it a lot. I think these are good things to always be thinking about and have a few go-tos that you can say for yourself in these moments. All right, where am I? Am I mentally doing this in the right sort of frame of mind? But was there anything that jumped out to you as new or insightful, or that particularly struck you as valuable and helpful?
It's what has struck me is how often we end up doing this to ourselves. I was trying to think, when's the last time I tried to pump myself up in the middle of competition? Mm-hmm. And it was just last night. We were playing pickleball with this other couple, and one of the configurations, we were down by 4 or 5 points. And I was like, okay, John, let's focus in here. Come on, let's get this. But I wasn't asking him to focus as much as I was like telling myself, let's not make any more mistakes here, right? But it was a pump up, but the tone of my voice as I was saying it to John was one of more like this pump up session more than this focus session. So I actually had this like natural kind of native thing, and it definitely was not high performance. It was not high performance.
I don't know,
and it didn't work out either.
Okay, well, that's the thing. I was literally obviously on the edge of my seat trying to figure out, oh my goodness, where is this drama going to take us?
No, and it was the husbands versus wives order of the competition.
Okay.
That's why I was really didn't want to lose that one, and it didn't work out altogether.
Did not work out. Well, I'm sorry about that. Now, do you think in the main sort of factor that we highlight in the field note is this idea of competitive arousal?
Right.
That there is an idea that you can't just go into a performance as though it were every other thing, right? There's a little bit of a lever up on this.
Yes.
But it can go too far in the other direction. So in the sense of competitive arousal, it would seem that the main question is, how do you get to the optimal point?
Yes.
Yeah. What would have helped you last night on the pickleball court?
Last night, I don't know. And I really don't think that pickleball is a very good way to deal with this because I'm not a high performer. My son is a professional dancer. And it was interesting to hear him talk about how his cast, as they're working on a cruise ship and do dozens and dozens of shows, and it just becomes rote and very routine to them, that they look for just one person in the audience that they end up performing for. Because oftentimes it just feels like just a run through, unless they have some kind of a connection of like, that person who I spoke with before, who's going to be excited to see me dance, is the one person that and sometimes they talk about as a cast of 14 persons, people like one person's boyfriend is in the audience or one person's mom is visiting and in the audience.
Mm-hmm.
And all 14 of them are like focused on the fact that we need to make that mom excited to watch our show. And it really becomes like this anchor for them every single time they have a show. And many times they don't have that anchor person in the audience, and they really feel how it affects their performance. Now, I wonder sometimes, as a professional dancer, he's probably a lot more judgmental on his own performance than anyone else in the audience. He could probably go through the motions and it still looks fantastic. But for him, he really knows what the difference of that extra. So that notion of what that extra is the difference between winning the Masters tournament and coming in third.
Yes, right.
Tournament, right?
Right. And so that sort of becomes the issue, which is, can you get yourself into just the right state? And there are all kinds of mental drills, and then lots of athletes have mental performance coaches and the rest of that. One of the things that is interesting, and our founder, who writes most of the field notes, actually was a college golfer, and he advises many high-level golf teams. He was advisor to the Ryder Cup captain a couple of cycles ago. And so you realize in those moments of high pressure, it's like they are performing. But one of the things that you consistently hear coming back to this is that the actual moment of game time, and we had a field note on this, is that it needs to be a degree of muscle memory that's also already been built in, that you're not treating that particular thing as any different than the way that you would go through that performance on any other day.
Right.
And that doesn't mean that that's in a relaxed state, because then you wouldn't actually be performing. So, and you can gauge these in different activities, even by heart rate. And you notice, I see now, because I've been aware of a lot of the different techniques around this, both from the literature that we see and coaching and all, but also from breathing techniques. And now you see even a lot of say UFC fighters, because I watch a lot of those fights with my wife, that in the minute between the rounds, they're doing breathing drills and things to bring their heart rate down, things they weren't doing 5 years ago.
Right.
And you would see a champion like Israel Adesanya, who would be like, in between rounds, his mouth isn't even open.
Right.
He's just breathing through his nose, and you can see getting his heart rate down, and so that he can perform at that level.
Right.
And so rather than saying, I'm in the Olympics or I'm at the US Open, whatever that thing where you all of a sudden feel this different level, if your heart rate is spiking, then you're not going to perform optimally. And all the research shows that for sharpshooters in the military, for whatever else it is, when you are too excited, then you have a big problem. So you kind of got to get back to say, I've taught my body that this is how I feel at the state of peak performance, and I'm going to get back to that level.
Yeah. And the significance of that practice is that it is done not just in your most nervous moments. You don't wait to instill this practice for the crucial game time. It's something that you've been doing all along. It's something you practice that practice repeatedly.
Yeah.
And I think that's what people miss, is like, oh, I need the pump up session, when the pump up session is actually creating a difference that you're not used to.
Yeah. Yeah. And by the way, the field note title being about being pumped up, and the upside and downside of getting pumped up. Notice it's not about the upside and downside of getting pumped up and pumped down. But in a way, the pump down is a big part of this. It's how do you get yourself up to just that right level of performance? And how do you kind of bring yourself down so that you're not over indexed on that? So there is both sides of this equation. And I remember the coaching somebody who was having a lot of problems in public speaking, just out of fear, which is a very common thing, right? So people get very anxious, their heart rate spikes. Some people have to take, medicine to kind of calm themselves down before they give a presentation. And so you see this in all of these sort of scenarios. And we've all felt that moment where all of a sudden, like, we realize, oh, I have to be in this conversation, and you feel your heartbeat beating.
Yes.
And you're like, wait, this isn't me. I'm not like this.
Well, when I was a high schooler, so you might be able to relate with this, there were, like, in the moments, I was probably 14, 15, when I was first getting up on stage in front of a large audience, and other people were getting up and performing in front of me. So you had to sit there and kind of like pretend to be a good audience member, but then you have to go up next. And my heart rate just going out of control. And And I remember as a 15-year-old sitting in the audience, my heart going crazy, not knowing what to do, but I just had to sit there. And I had like 3 other people before I went up on stage. And I actually pictured my heart beating so fast that it beat out of my chest. It was this stupid little thing that I did where it was like, I pictured myself looking at my heart and it would beat. And then suddenly it was there and I would like kind of let it go away. Right. And where I wasn't trying to control it, I
just
let
noticed it. Yeah.
Go. Right. And that is a thing that weirdly calmed me down. And so it helped me once. And so I started to do it over and over again. And it's so weird that I haven't thought about that forever. But anytime I'm getting up and having a performance and I notice my heart, I notice it and then I picture it just allowing it to beat as wildly as it wants and then beat out of my chest and float away. This really is a little thing. But when you had a lot of those times when you were in high school and maybe felt like you were out of your depth, right? Standing in front of 6,000 people.
Yes.
And you've talked about like the thing that you said to kind of humor the audience.
Using a little self-deprecating humor.
But when you're backstage, what do you do to calm yourself down to actually take that first step?
Well, I actually have heard of speakers. I guess I've done this a little bit myself from time to time, which is sometimes just actually getting that energy out. And that could be, I'm going to do some jumping jacks. I'm going to walk around the block. I'm going to you're not trying to rouse yourself more. You're trying to an escape valve. I got to get a little bit of the steam to go away. And so that I can calm myself, down. But think about it, this way. One of the things there are still probably people listening that maybe read the field note that are like, I like getting pumped up. I like being fired up. And they like that idea of like, all right, let's go, right? And to a degree, that's fine. But one of the things that they've studied in the literature is that people that get too ramped up for any kind of performance sometimes then miss the strategy move that they need to make. They get overcommitted to the plan that they have. Right. Like they're in this plan, they're like so pumped. And so even though the situation is telling them, you need to tack, you need to move, you need to adapt, they stay focused on that thing and it's not the right thing anymore because they were so pumped up, which is a danger that we probably don't think of very often.
Right. No, that adrenaline is something that needs to be controlled more than, let to go crazy.
Yeah. Now, you can also, it's often a little trope of coaching around public speaking of that, when you feel the anxiety, the butterflies, to be like, just redefine that instead of as energy rather than anxiety. And I think there's a truth to that. I think the cautionary tale would be, I did hear once John Mulaney, a very popular comedian, but early in his career, where I'd been watching him on stage at, doing small sets in New York City at the Comedy Cellar. And later, he made a joke and said, yes, there's always this anxiety, but he said, I like to call it free cocaine. And he would make the joke and people would laugh because everybody knew that years earlier he'd had a big cocaine problem. The problem was later he relapsed and also then later had a cocaine problem. Right. So you have to choose your metaphors very carefully. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, free adrenaline might be a better metaphor.
Free adrenaline, yeah, that's a little bit better. So, but you only need a little bit, a little bit of adrenaline. And I do think that one of the things, with my youngest daughter, because I have a couple of performers in among my 5 kids, and different ones have been in moments of anxiety before a big performance. And what was amazing, she had a very high stakes sort of thing last week. She was totally calm and totally blew me away in the way that she actually performed because it seemed just fine, like to her in that moment. But I remember earlier, maybe a couple of months ago, we went through kind of a drill. And one of those drills is kind of in a peaceful way, kind of going through stages of envisioning your performance like you're supposed to do, but also thinking about, well, what can go wrong? Like let's think about what, as sometimes David Cook says, what's the 20 minutes before the trophy celebration? Right. We can say, I can see when I win. Well, that 20 minutes before the trophy is a different level of tension. So now, not only think about that, but think about, well, what if my mic doesn't come on? What if a piece of the set for this musical falls over in the middle of this? What if the pianist starts late? Think about all these things. How will you respond? How will you react? So that it's not only I know my lines, I know my performance. I've done this 30 times. I'm ready for this. But also just thinking in that extra stage about the possibilities of what can go wrong, that just adds to your confidence that okay, I'm ready for this.
Right. And if you have done your preparation, the best thing is that you get into a spot where you can rely on your instincts, where it just kind of naturally happens for you.
Well,
which means don't cram. Like if you're going into a performance, don't cram your notes, right? We've had this advice from others as well, is you maybe an hour before you look over your notes, but in those 20 minutes prior to performance, put those notes aside. Don't, because you want your head to be free and your brain to be instinctive about what you're about to say instead of
yes. And then in the moment when it's going, I think one of the things you see in really quality performers of any kind, and particularly athletics, is they know when they're getting too close to the red line. They are aware all along. Okay, I got to keep my heart rate in the 140s here. If I get into the 170s, I'm in trouble, right? So they're not going to keep pushing because it'll fall apart.
Right.
I saw this in the recent this 2025 CrossFit Games. There was a couple of very high intensity competitions where really high quality, the best athletes in the world, pushed too hard, and in the final 30 seconds couldn't quite pull off what they needed to do. They needed, but the experienced athletes, the ones that had been through it more times, they knew how to pace that so that they were never over that red line.
Right. No, when you have to do so many pulls or snatches or whatever, and then one of them or two of them you fault on, right? There's a real moment of panic.
You lose time and all. Yeah, and it does exactly. So good luck to everybody in your high performance, and a few breathing drills, a little bit of preparation, and then just do it like you would do it on any other great day of high level practice, and you'll probably be fine.
Yeah. And I love the last line, leave the fist pumps to those who, normally do fist pumps, right?
And every now and then in a low stakes environment, which we just saw over this last weekend, you might kick a 70-yard field goal.
Yeah. Oh. If only it was a real game.
I know.
Can't even talk about it as real. He does those in practice all the time.
Yeah.
All right. See